This is where the fun begins.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this morning's Caff chat. And I'm so happy to be here with you guys. Here I am. And good morning. Cheers to you again with my stylish mug here with my concept art of Luke Skywalker on Tatooine, looking up at the sky for bigger things, his future endeavors, whatever you want to call that. And it's called Hope. So you can find this in my merch on Redbubble. Anyways, welcome to Caff Chat this morning. Beautiful Thursday morning. I'm kind of cold here. I woke up to my house being like 69 degrees, I guess you could say. And so I turned on the heater. So the studio is a little bit cold. So I got my sweater on. I got a blanket on my lap. And I'm ready to go. So how are you guys doing? If you are catching this on the replay, please like and share and leave me a comment. And if you guys are tuning in right now, please like, share, let them know we are live now. And I have some interesting topics for you guys today. One thing that I wanted to cover is going more into depth of the state of the fans of Star Wars, like with this war against the direction that Disney has been taking the property. So I wouldn't say it is a woke, it could more or less be a culture war, but I think it goes deeper than that. So I want to talk a little bit more about that from last time we discussed this. I also want to point out like how Disney Lucasfilm Associates continue to speak out against the fans and against the old EU. And this happened with the Sentinel on Twitter. So I want to go ahead and cover that as well as talk about the lore, which we're going to get into Mandalorian lore. We're going to get into the Chosen One lore. That will also go into Cringe Factor, which there's two main topics with that. And one is about George Lucas didn't get the Chosen One prophecy right, or lore right, I guess you can say. And the other one is about the Mandalorian culture destroyed or ruined the EU or something like that. And that's going with the original EU. So we're going to get into all this juicy stuff, talk about lore. However, I want to go ahead and see who's in the chat, who's bouncing in. Grab your favorite beverage. If it's morning time and you're tuning in with some coffee, what are you enjoying? If you're going to lunch or dinner, because we do have viewers around the world, thank you so much, you guys. Let me know your beverage. Maybe you're having a meal too. So let me know what you're sitting down with as we begin Caff Chat. All right. So, and I forgot, we do have a poll. The poll here, and I think I know who's going to win this because I don't think many know about the Lost Tribe of the Sith, whether it is centuries earlier or in 44 BB or ABY. So, favorite Sith from the Lost Tribe of the Sith? Looking at Gavar, not Kavar, Gavar Kai. I don't know why I put a K there. I don't know. I was doing this when I first woke up. No coffee, so I apologize. And then Darish Vol, who was the main guy. I think it was a High Sith Lord or whatever. So he's the main guy. He was the one that oversees the whole community, the planet or whatever. Darish Vol, basically he ended up being killed by Abeloth on the planet, and Vistara Kai, which is Gavar Kai's daughter, and many probably know her because of Ben Skywalker. And then we have Tola Anax. I think I'm saying that right. Anyways, so after Vistara kills her father because Gavar Kai basically sided with Abeloth and he betrayed the Lost Tribe of the Sith. So his people, he betrayed them. She killed her father, and then after that, Tola basically took his spot as Abeloth's like number one, and eventually Abeloth went ahead and basically took her body and used her body, and Tola ended up dying from so much of the Force dark side power being used in her body, I guess, if that's the right explanation. But anyways, yeah, so those are those four. Lost Tribe of the Sith, circa about around 44 ABY. And this is in the Fate of the Jedi era. So those of you might know that better than the prehistoric. I wouldn't even say prehistoric. Geez, that sounds so bad. But the Lost Tribe of the Sith, way centuries back. Yeah, but they're from Kesh. Basically, the Lost Tribe are a group of Sith that crash landed on Kesh, and I'm just using some quick explanation there. And the natives there basically seen them as gods and stuff like that, and they praise them, and I guess you could say the Sith culture became part of the culture, and there was intermarriages and stuff like that. So it's very interesting. However, there's mixed reviews on Lost Tribe of the Sith novel, and it's a series of stories, but it tells a history way back then, and then we're seeing them come back in the story here for Fate of the Jedi. So very interesting stuff there. Very interesting. So let's get into the chat. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this off. I woke up kind of sick, like my whole right side is congested. So I really didn't do anything with my face today to present myself with you guys here. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn off my mic. I'll probably turn it on and off throughout the whole show. But yeah. And again, it's Gabber, not Caver. I don't know why. And I'm like, whoa, crap. I said Caver, not Gabber. So we have Batsy Universe. Hail OG and hail the chat. Yes, hello to you. Thank you for coming in. And we have a channel member here, and here we go. Yes, and here we go. No technical difficulties, anything like that, other than, my right side is congested. I don't know if I'm getting sick. I don't know. I don't want to. I feel fine. I really do. It's just an annoyance I woke up with. Matt G, and man, 5 cups of coffee for you. All right, let's get this show started. And hello to you, Matt G. And Caffeinated Wolf is in the house. Hello, good morning to you as well. Let's see here. And he says good number. Yeah, I figured someone would pick up on that, but that's what my thermostat said. It was 69 in here. I'm the kind that I get cold easy. So I am more of I laugh and call myself like a lizard because I'm cold-blooded, not in that sense, but I get cold easy. So I'd rather go outside and sit underneath the sun, even in the summertime. I'm still covered up with a blanket. I'm weird like that. But so then if I get cold, I'll go outside and sit down under the sun and warm myself up. And I used to be anemic. I'm not now, but that's just my temperature wise, my body basal, I guess you could say. I run a little colder, Matt G. And then Casperius, how are you doing? And see here, and Night Ronin, how are you doing? Vanilla chai, iced, no sugar. Interesting. A chai with no sugar. So you like it spicy with a little bit of vanilla to smooth it out. Nice. Chai tea is really good. Thai iced tea is another good one, but because it's made with condensed milk, oh god, it can get really sweet. Batos, hello. Hey guys, I'm back. Hey, how are you doing? No coffee equals not functioning. Yes, and that's what happened to my poll. I got up, I'm like, I forgot to put the poll up there for, when I prepped last night and made the StreamYards link and all that. And I forgot to do the poll, so I did it this morning. And that's the first thing I did while my coffee was being made. So yeah. Let's see here. And then the Fractured Filter, how are you doing? Good morning, everyone. Yeah. Caffeine is brewing now, by the way. Awesome. Cheers to that. No coffee? Where? Yeah, that sounds kind of like blasphemy, right? Especially for Caff Chat. You have to have your coffee, or at least something like if it's not morning for you and you don't drink, you're not the kind of coffee drinker that kind of has it throughout the day. I do that sometimes. I'm guilty. I'm guilty. At least you have another preferred drink other than water. Water, I always stress, always get your water in. And I think how many ounces determines that you need a drink determines, like, you'll take your weight divided by half, and that number is usually how many ounces of water your body needs. So a little rule of thumb there for those, and that's my my fitness advice here, since I do work in the fitness industry and stuff. Let's see here. Morning, y'all. Please hit that like button and get ready for some cringe. Yes, thanks to Caffeinated Wolf and Soul Assassin. Both of them presented me about the same hour. It was crazy. About the same time frame with some horrifically qualifying cringe factor material. I'm not kidding you. So I was like, wow, these guys are on it. Thank you so much. And mind you, take, like these articles and where we get these cringe factor articles from. Mind you, they're not like regular journalism where they're authentic and they have facts and stuff. That's why I use them for cringe factor. But there are some truth into it, because when you notice, what these cringe sites are presenting, usually Lucasfilm or maybe another industry like, Marvel or whatever, DC or whatever's going on in the other franchise, it's all similar, right? There's some kind of truth to it, because then those franchises kind of basically out themselves of going that direction as well. So I don't know if there's like people give them under the table material to share and use and stuff. I don't know. However, then we get these articles that are just opinion, and they are super fucking cringy. I swear to God. And it kind of shares with you how these people who write these articles view either George Lucas or pre-Disney material. Yeah. So anyways, I'm done with that rant, but we're going to get into another one here before we get into Mandalorian lore, talk about the Chosen One, and get into the cringe factor. I'm going to go ahead and get into something that was shared to me by the Sentinel, and it is basically revealing another Disney Lucasfilm associate and how they kind of tear down the EU and stuff like that. I wouldn't say maybe it's gaslighting the fans. I don't know. But it's the same rhetoric that we got from the other associates, and it's still going on today. And this person, his name is Jake, basically says that, he's no longer with Lucasfilm. He was an editor on the Bad Batch season 2, or I don't know, last season, I believe. We'll find out when I bring up the article, or bring up not the article, but the screenshot. But yeah, so it's the same BS that happens all the time with these new associates that come in and work. And he professes to be an EU fan or has read the EU pre-Disney. And I'm like, sure you did, buddy. Whatever. And just because you did work for Lucasfilm post George doesn't mean that you qualify as an authority to state what you did. So I'll get into more of that. So hold on to your hats, hold on to your seats, hold on to your mugs. We'll get into that here in just a minute or so. But if you're tuning in, please hit the like button. Go and vote on the poll, and I'll go ahead and read the stats on the poll. I forgot to give you guys that when I was talking about the Lost Tribe of the Sith. Soul Assassin says, I thought it was 8 cups of water is what you need. Well, I mean, that's a good starting point, but so it's half your weight, because everybody's body composition is very different, and everybody's weight is very different. So like if you're on the lean side, you may need a little bit less. If you're more on the fat or fluffy, I don't know. I'm kind of cautious on how to say. So if you're more chubbier, I don't know how to classify this without getting in trouble here, because people are so afraid of talking about being fat, obese, or whatever, because you're fat phobic, you're fat shaming. But anyways, so it depends on your body composition, and you divide it, you take your weight divided by half, and that's how many ounces you need. That's a good starting point. 8 cups is another good starting point, but as long as you're getting your water. So that's my advice. 1 cup doesn't cut it, 2 cups doesn't cut it, so go to 8 cups at least. Keep your body well functioning. Well, it helps the digestion. It helps keep the organs functioning in high capacity, in normal high capacity, I guess you can say. And it keeps the muscles functioning as they should. It keeps the fascia too really well lubed, so that you don't have tight fascia and you're not trying to do fascia release and stuff. water is plain healthy for you, but it may not taste good because it doesn't have any taste. That's why we prefer other drinks. But anyways, I'm done ranting on about drinking water. So cheers to you guys as I hold my mug of coffee up. James Unchained says, morning all. Sorry I'm late. Was shoveling my porch. What's going on? Yes, we are all going through this cold spell, I guess. I live in the Central Valley, California. And where I live out on this reservation here, like it like held around us. It rained heavy around us, but the temperature could significantly dropped. And then on the reservation where I live at, it snowed a little bit with a little bit of slush and snow. Just a little bit. It didn't really stick because we live in a valley and our elevation is really, really low. And so it did snow slush a little bit, but that's it. And it was there for like, it happened for like less than 5 minutes, maybe, I guess you could say, and then done. So that's not common for where I live at. The mountains around me, yes, it's common, but not in the valley. Solar Assassin says, remember the 5 levels of fat: big, healthy, husky, thick, and damn. Wow. and think, and talking about being healthy, working and working out, your normal job and working out, keeping yourself healthy. I just watched, like, 2 days ago, someone shaming a big conversation about working out and stuff like that. So it was crazy. Let's see here. Kasperi says water tastes pretty darn good, especially when it's hot. Iced water, so good when you are completely dehydrated, but otherwise bland as heck. And I'm like, it's good. I like my big tall glass of iced water in the summertime. So good. But then I dance outside in the weather in my full regalia at powwows. And so water, heavenly as. And we have Justin, Star Wars Marvel Purist. What's up, OG and chat? What's up? And okay, let's go ahead and before I get into that bit of back and forth, let's go ahead and check out the poll. So if you haven't had a chance, get in there and vote now. So it's Gavar Kai, not Kavar Kai. That's Visteri's dad. He's at 0%. And Gavar Kai basically ended up siding with Abeloth, and Vestera ended up killing him. So there's a whole interesting story behind that. And then we have Darish Val. So Darish Val basically was the high Sith Lord of the entire planet, the entire population of Sith on Kesh. And he is at 29%. And Vistar Kai is at 71%. I figured she would probably start just leading just because of who she is, basically being held captive. And yes, being held captive by Luke and Ben Skywalker while they're on their while he was in exile. So it's a whole nother story behind that if you haven't read it, because it might sound kind of alarming when I said, say Luke Skywalker held a Sith captive. Yes, he did, but there's this whole story behind that. She is at 71%, and then we have Tola Anax, who is at 0. And Tola basically took Gavar Kai's place besides Abeloth, and then she overtook Tola's body. So very interesting lore there. Fate of the Jedi, I highly recommend read that. But if you haven't made your way towards that and haven't read Fates, or even gotten through New Jedi Order, I would say make your way over there. You really don't necessarily need to read a lot to get into that series, but it is very helpful. It is very helpful because there's a lot of continuity being connected here and there, as is expected with the EU. Because when you start reading, the more you read and you get into it and you start progressing along into the lore, the more you're going to see the connections. You're like, oh, wow. So and-so was mentioned here in this timeline here, and they're revisiting the history or whatever, the relationship between these two or whatever. So it's a very interesting. That's why that's what got me into the EU as well. Luke Skywalker, wanting to know what he did after Return of the Jedi. I wanted to know, did he keep his promise to Yoda and start the order again, So I wanted to know what's going to happen with him, what's going to happen with Han and Leia as well. But particularly, I was, a bigger fan of Luke Skywalker, and that's what got me into the EU. And then as I kept reading, I was like, wow, this connected here, this connected there. And then I kept going and I kept going and I kept going. And then as soon as more started being released in PT and pre-PT era, I started going that way because I got curious as well. Now I'm not very Couture basically is one of my weaknesses. I do know the lore and stuff, but I can't really sit down and give you a breakdown per character. I know Caffeinated Wolf can. So so we talk frequently about that. So yeah, and then those who are familiar with playing Couture, I chat with because again, I didn't play the game. I read the books. So I can't really break down a lot when it comes to beat by beat, but I do understand the lore. I do know the lore. So that's where my weakest area is. We all have that. So Soul Sense says, no snow, but got some new puppies that have been keeping me up. Wow, how fun. So far, Darth Toby has not made it into the studio. And I'm hoping that he just stays asleep on the couch and stays there because he can be a pain in the butt sometimes. Okay. Post. Okay, let's see here. And let's see here. Guys, we're in golden age of fan-made audiobooks. This channel has Fate of the Jedi, Boba Fett. Okay, thank you so much. Yes. And you're thank you so much. Like you've done your research, what channels, are revisiting and bringing back the lore in their unique ways that we can digest in another way. Couture. That's what most annoying about these Disney fake Star Wars fans. They act as if the EU is full of contradictions. Yes, I agree, and has no cohesiveness. When Disney can't even keep their lore and continuity. Yes. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull up that article now. So not article. I keep on calling it an article. It's not an article. It's a conversation, which the Sentinel was like, "Who is this guy?" After he started by raiding the EU. And then he finds out that he is an editor for the Bad Batch. I believe it's the Bad Batch. I'm pretty sure it's the Bad Batch. So here it is. Let me go ahead and take this off the screen. And so here it is. Here's the beginning of the conversation. So let me see, where am I going here? Here we go. All right. So basically he's been on a roll sharing information from Leland Shee, about the Clone Wars and what have you, what's, in the past about past Leland, how he felt about reboots, all of this. And basically he says, even before the first episode of TCW aired, the expanded universe fans were right on the money about the disaster this would cause to the timeline and lore. Leland telling us it was Dave complaining about having to work with the Star Wars continuity in the first place is hilarious. So basically he shares his proof on what he's speaking of here. And I'm not going to get into the screenshots here. I'm just going to get into this conversation. And of course we have someone talking about Filoni here, talking about Lucasfilm should have never given Filoni the key to the city after his disastrous Clone Wars film, which not only it was a box office bomb, but was also started the damage control cycle for Anakin and the horrendous introduction of Ahsoka Tano. And so this Jake Nehemiah comes in with his take. That was all George, right? George was involved in all of the Clone Wars except for the final season from 2020. And I'm like, and so this is what hit the alarm bells in the Sentinel's head. And so he went ahead and further research. But there's this back and forth here, and I wanted to get into here, get into the full conversation here. Let me see here. I'm not going to get into that full conversation, but I'm going to share this. So this is what he found, because he does go on and say, and I'll go back to it, about how the EU was somewhat good, but relatively bad. And he'd rather watch a consistent show, the Clone Wars, than read an inconsistent, timeline of books, basically is what he said. So that's what steered, Sentinel's alarms in his head. So he wanted to research, and he says confirmed sightings of a Lucasfilm employee. So this is Disney Lucasfilm, not pre-Disney. Get back to work, Jake. So this guy, Jake Nehemiah, basically Star Wars: The Bad Batch. It looks like maybe season one, or whatever. Well, it says 24 episodes, but basically he was an editor, and this is what he says: "Man, it was all well done in some books, but terrible in others. I'd rather I'd rather the consistent voice that have than having the whiplash of good and awful and good and god awful from the EU." So basically, he's tearing down the EU. He came out, basically outed himself, that rang, some alarms in the Sentinel's mind. And oh yeah, and he also did the Tales of the Jedi. So basically, he did both Tales of the Jedi. And so that's what that is. So we're coming into another Disney Lucasfilm employee who wants to downgrade to bash the EU, then go and act as authority to knowing, quote unquote, knowing that George worked on every single episode of the TCW. He was there faithfully, and we know he wasn't. There's a video I shared not too long ago of Filoni even saying that, oh yeah, George stepped back. And it's even said that, Filoni was given full control directive of TCW at one point. So there we go. So just another Disney Lucasfilm employee bashing the EU to make either Filoni's or basically Disney Star Wars look better, because the EU was all bad. And then my thought was, well, and he does say later on in there, and I'm not going to go and find it, but he does say that he read the EU, so he knows what he's talking about. But usually when people profess that, they haven't read it all. They have not read it all. And to me, it feels like he is a Filoni apologist, in a sense, a Disney apologist. I don't know. So let's see what you guys have to say here. Let's see here. Yes, it is. And thank you so much for the conversations. All right. So together with a fucking story group created to do just that. You mentioned his name only 2 more times and he'll appear. Darth Toby. Oops. One more time. Well, no, he is playing, because like I said, my studio is open up to my kitchen, to the dining area of the kitchen. So when I do teach art and bead classes and stuff, I can put up my table here in the studio, and then also use the kitchen table as well if I have a big class. So he is playing, and I'm going to say old style, red style, ghetto style, I don't know what you want to call this, but I do have a Pendleton blanket as quote unquote the door, at least to separate between the two. Very, very nice blanket. Yeah, kind of resi, I guess you can say. So he's playing underneath it. So yes, and now he left. So yes. All right. Just checking in. What's the notif button even good for? I don't know. It's so crazy. That's why I like to share my tweets and all of that. So when I prep at night, the night before, Wednesday night, I will go ahead and schedule the tweets to go out. So I have one tweet that goes out at 6 a.m. I'm still asleep at 6 a.m., but it tweets itself. It's set to go off at 6, or tweet that Caff Chat will be live at 9 a.m. And then 8, I set a tweet to appear at 8 a.m. and then 8:58 saying we're going live. So I don't know. So keep an eye on Twitter as well, and make sure that you have notifications on. That's another thing. So Justin says, thanks to Soul Sauce, I'm currently listening to a fan-made audiobook of Republic Commando Hard Contact. Great production quality. Awesome. That's amazing to hear. I am so glad that, fans are taking the initiative to give us, at least either a fan film or an Audible style book you can listen to. So just think, in a few years, you can have almost exact voices of the actors to read the audiobook. There we go. And Soul Assassin says George stepped back when he was filming Red Tails. Yes, he stepped back when he was filming Red Tails, and I can't find the interview anymore, but it was an interview with George Lucas, and behind him there's, the whole image of the TCW characters, and he does talk about that after season 3 he stepped away and gave Filoni the control or run of the TCW. so that he had confidence in him, I guess. I don't know. And I can't find it. I shared it with other people before when I first found it. I wish I would have saved it or bookmarked it or whatever. So I don't know if it was taken down or I'm just not pressing in the right search key words or something. I don't know. But it's supposed to be on YouTube. And James Unchained said, sounds like he's trying to save his job. If the EU still exists, he wouldn't have a job making further tales. Yeah. Let's see here. Let me scroll up here. Yeah, so that's that. So these Disney Lucasfilm associates, whether he's still on the payroll or not, he's an editor that came in for them. So it feels like they spit this. It's like the same rhetoric. It's like they tell him you must hate the EU as the prerequisite for being hired these days, right? And it's the same damn rhetoric here. So just to expose this Jake Nehemiah. So he is on Twitter. I don't recommend you going and harassing him or anything like that. However, this is the take. This is the response, all stemming from the Sentinel just sharing facts and information from Leland Chi at the time about TCW and its direction. Yeah, that's it. That's all. And he comes stepping in and bashes the EU at the same time, acting as if he's authority, as if he worked directly with George when George was head of the company. So there we go. All right. So that's on here. Like I said, don't go and harass him. I just wanted to point out that another associate is coming in and causing bad discord with Star Wars fans. And I think it just goes to on par with who they are and who they work for, so this guy may not reveal himself. Who knows? Again, who knows? So there you go. Now, let's get into Mandalorian culture here, and then we'll talk about the chosen one here. So, how many of you here love Karen Travis's direction with the Mandalorians and how she opened up and enriched the Star Wars lore with this warrior culture called the Mandalorians? So let me know in the chat. And if you are joining, please hit the like button. Please vote on the poll, and I'll check the poll here before we get into the Mandalorian culture. And share that we're live. And if you're catching the replay, please hit the like button and comment and let me know you were here. And anything that you want to, voice about that we talked about, please share in the comments as well. So, we have this here. Let me go ahead and check the poll here. So we both, Gavar Kai and Tola are both at 0%. I figured not many know about them. I'm just surprised that Gavar Kai doesn't have a vote. So we have Darish Vol here at 18 and then Vistera at 82%. So we have basically 11 votes. You guys, come on, vote. Vote. I know we have more in the chat. We do. We have about 15 of you guys. So let's see here. The chat is now catching up with me here on StreamYards. George stepped back when he was filming. Yeah, I read that one. You guys are starting to move here. Virtually all of my Mandalore is from KOTOR and the Old Republic games and novels. Yes, and that's great because you're getting the history back in that era. They expand. They come from the Tong. I believe it's the Tong. Did I get that right? Anyways, they were a species from Coruscant that basically left the planet. I think they were kind of pushed out or whatever. And they were searching for a new home planet, and they found the planet that they named Mandalore. And from there, they were still a warrior species and stuff, and they adapted themselves to the planet. And as other people started coming to the planet and stuff, the culture started evolving. I'm just giving a quick, brief thing before we get into more of it. And that's where they started adopting other species in, but they had to follow, the culture and stuff like that. And over time, we started getting the Resnari. We had the different type of Mandalores, in different eras. We had the Mandalore basically is the main chief, I guess you can say. I wouldn't say ruler or whatever because they're not a government type people. They're not a people that is ruled. Um, I would say maybe they're very much a democracy, but I could be wrong on that. Um, but anyways, and then over time we get to like Jester Muriel, who takes the Rizonari and makes the Super Commando Codex. So it's basically all of this here. The Rizonari speak the language, wear the armor, and they did have a religion way back then with the Tong. And then after that, they started breaking away from the religion and went more into a what we see now is the Rizonari. So just in brief. So I would highly recommend exploring the Mandalorian culture from way back in history all the way up to Django and current, even Fate of the Jedi. So speak the language, wear the armor, serve the clan, rally when called, defend defend your children and raise them as Mandalorians. And I have it covered here, but raise them as Mandalorian. So they were very, very family oriented, but family didn't have to be by blood. And that's what makes them uniquely and vastly different than a lot of cultures in the Star Wars universe or galaxy. And I would say if you want to go with like a non-binary culture in a sense, and this is what gets me with today's outlook with these Disney fans wanting to insert today's narrative on gender culture, I guess you can say, or whatever you want to classify it as. The Mandalorians, you would say they're kind of like non-binary, even though there's even though they were binary, they had the male and females. Their language, when they talked to their children or when they talked and addressed their grandparents, there was only one word for grandma and grandpa. And so the language wasn't classified by your sex or gender. And women had to be as tough as men. So this is where I get very like frustrated with these people who are like, Star Wars never had inclusivity. There, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, for reals? Are you kidding me? Look at the Mandalorian culture. It was all about diversity. It was all about like family not being a blood. So you can have a human adopt a Twi'lek and that's their child, right? And all that. And then you can have, your men marrying men and stuff, because there is that. Very unique culture here. And this was pre-Disney. So this is what gets me so fucking frustrated when I see all this narrative, like they never had diversity and we want this and we want that, and I can go into the drag panel bullshit, but I'm not going to. We'll talk about that on the spacing some more or whatever. But anyways, so it's a very unique culture. And then when Jester Morel came around, we had he made the Commander Codex, which basically just expanded a lot of what the Resonarly was, and had great expectations on how one should be, because the Mandalorians started going into very savage ways, I guess you can say. And Jester Muriel was basically a person that had high standards and morals. And we know who he basically adopted as his son, and that's Jango Fett. Jango Fett came from Concord Dawn, which is another Mandalorian world that had Mandalorians in the Mandalorian sector, basically. And so he made the Commando Codex and stuff like that, but then it ended up splitting up the factions of Mandalorians. So under him was the true Mandalorians and the Mandalorian protectors, and the opposition was basically the Death Watch and the new Mandalorians. So the new Mandalorians, you can say, are basically TCW, Satine people, and so you could say that because that's how they kind of like retcon them in, I guess you can say, so that the lore was kind of consistent considering what happened with TCW. And we're going back to that very thing again on how TCW created inconsistencies. So let me see who is coming in. And if you're coming in Please hit that like button. Please vote. Got about another 20-30 minutes before I take the poll down. So, yes, it was. I already talked about that. I think you missed it. That's the first thing I did this morning because I forgot to put the poll up last night. And I did a K instead of a G, which my bad. And I didn't want to take the poll down. So I just left it. So it's Gavar, not Cavar. So I apologize for that. I already addressed that already, but yeah, so it's Gavar, not Cavar. A Soul Assassin says, dude, they went hard on Karen Travis in that article. Bunch, yes, we're gonna get into that. That's Cringe Factor. So you're giving away some stuff, but that's okay. And we'll get into the Chosen One culture lore as well before we get into those. So this is my focus on giving Mandalorian lore and even the Chosen One lore will help us segue into these two articles so that people who maybe don't understand Mandalorian lore and culture very much, they haven't really got into it, are really expanding on the Chosen One prophecy and lore behind that. We can, revisit the lore before we get into these shitty ass Cringe Factor articles. The Tong were the proto Mandalorians, correct? They're the ones that set up the culture, and over time it evolved into what we see here. Let's see here. I agree with Wolf. They may have been seen as savages during the Mando War and other times, but at least they are noble but about it, if not honorable. Yeah. Yep. I didn't see that in there. Let's see here. And then Justin says, "What's the name of the article? Gonna check it out again later. I will share. We are gonna do that for Cringe Factor. I'm not trying to have you guys go give it clicks. But we're gonna go through it here a little bit and break it down a little bit more. Again, this shows you the direction. Like I said, there are some truth to these on the direction that the companies want to take these franchises and how these people badmouth what came before, whether it's George or the EU, is very evident. And we've seen it in that Jake guy who responded to the Sentinel. There's a pattern, you guys. Watch it. Even though you don't like these shitty ass articles that come out for, as clickbait, as people call them, there are truth to that. You kind of get a glimpse on the direction and how they're trying to make people perceive Star Wars pre-Disney so that they can continue to give you what they want people to think is better, much better. So there are some, so that's why I do this Cringe Factor as well, because then I give you the history and we talk about the lore, the history and stuff. We get into the Cringe Factor, we debunk, and I put my venom into these articles, and then we're done. So it is to make the old look bad. So I guess you can say rewriting history in a sense, so that when people go view the current lore under Disney, they think it's a lot better. So see the method to this madness here that they're doing. So there we go. Let's see here. The Mandalorian Wars were when the Mandalorian culture started changing the modern version. Yeah. And I was like going to write down the whole friggin' timeline of like what happened when and stuff, just to kind of talk about a little bit more here. But I didn't. I had a busy night last night and I didn't. I apologize. However, you are right. So the Mandalorian Wars is basically when you started seeing the shift and the change to the modern version. Like I said, the Mandalorian culture and lore is very interesting. Karen Travis did a magnificent job on expanding a significant race. And a lot of people don't like, well, I want to say a lot. There are some that don't like her because they don't like how her approach to the Jedi. However, it made sense. Why? Because at that time, and even during the Mandalorian, when they were fighting in the ancient times, I guess you could say, I don't know, against the Jedi, they were enemies. They were enemies with the Jedi long before the Clone Wars. And one of the reason why Jango, basically, where it was considered was because he's a Mandalore. He's a Mandalorian. And they are known to have fought, are enemies with the Jedi and can defeat them. It was all part of the plan. I mean, seriously, if someone did some consistent writing on the direction, even with Sidious and with the Clone Wars, it was Karen Travis with how the clones were trained, because it has to make sense to how maybe how the clones could easily defeat other than having the order and being genetically altered to obey, and then they were trained by Mandalorians too. So it made sense for how Karen Travis written these clones even after the Clone Wars when we get into the dark times and how they perceive the Jedi. It made sense. It's all culturally. And yeah, she did write a Jedi or two that were basically questioning and stuff, their direction and stuff, and that's common. They were just coming out of war, and even May says we're not soldiers basically. Yeah. So, anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and um, digress from there. Decade says, I call them the pandas of the Star Wars universe. The pandas would rather kill than reproduce, but it's this is for fun. Okay, interesting. Pandas, huh? Pandas just cannot figure it out to reproduce, but they adopt. Okay, Django's open season is great, correct, and I highly recommend that comic. I highly recommend that comic. Soul Assassin read Django Fett open season and play or watch the cutscenes of Bounty Hunter and Django's story. Correct. Thank you guys. Um, I'm not even gonna try it and get it. I don't know what you're trying to get. I don't know. Okay, they've been trying to destroy the Mandalore since even in the Clone Wars series. Correct. They said Django wasn't true Mandalorian when they stated, but that was Visla, I guess. That was and he's the Death Watch. So of course he's gonna talk shit and say, because Django, his father, Jester, made the super commando codex, basically off the Resonari. Of course, he's the opposing factor, and so is Satine. She's the opposing factor, and so that was one thing they had to retcon, and that's what we're seeing here. So it's not that, oh well, it's now set in stone because he said that Django wasn't a Mandalorian. No, that's just an opposing faction of the true Mandalorians and the protectors speaking out against and talking shit about a true Mandalorian. So you see the retcon there. So people still hold on to, oh, it was retcon. They're no longer this, or no, it's not. Because once that was said, and after the lore started moving forward, that was retcon to them being opposing factions. And I don't think people get that. Yes, Leland had to course correct. And I think the Sentinel did share some information about that as well on Twitter, and how they were having to go back and retcon or redirect the lore, or correct the lore, correct the direction it was going from TCW. And that's what they did. And people don't realize that the new Mandalorians, which is Satine's faction, and the Death Watch are opposing factions to the true Mandalorians and the Protectors. So hopefully I cleared that up for you guys. Yeah, I don't get it. I always thought the Mandos were a culture, a belief, not a species. They were a species at one time, a long time ago, in the very first creation, I guess you can say, of the culture, the lore and stuff of Mandalorian. They were the tongue, and then, like I said, they started evolving. They started adopting other people in, all of that. And I think the Tong were compatible with humans too, I think. I have to look into that. So if anybody knows in the chat, like Soul Assassin, let me know. The Fets are Mandalorians. Their family and the Mandalorians go way back. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Let's see here. The Jedi frowning upon relationships cuts down on the possibility of having offspring that become too powerful in the Force through natural selection. Like the PT era, and around that time frame, yes, attachment like that, and families was frowned upon because of the attachment they got too dogmatic with it, but even way before then they did have families. And then when Luke came along, that was corrected, course corrected, and they had families again. So we see the ebb and flow of the order and how stagnant they got. And even Yoda says that in Revenge of the Sith, and how stagnant they got and how they failed to evolve. So that was an interesting one there. That's the chapter. If you want to read that chapter, it's called The New Jedi Order. I highly recommend it. It gives Yoda's perspective on everything after, they after the purge, or when it's still happening, I guess you can say, in a sense. Let's see here. Soul Assassin, the tongue began dying out around the Exar Kun War and were gone by the time of the Dark Wars with Korea. Correct. Cyan and Nihilus. Yes, correct. And Caffeinated Wilson as well. Yeah, there's Cassis Fett. Yes. Yes, there is. And so he was one of them that I believe at one point he became a Mandalore, I believe. But I know he did serve one of the Mandalores as well. And very interesting there. If you want to get more into the Mandalorian culture, go ahead and check out Mandalore. I did interview him for Caff Chat. Very wonderful guy, very insightful, very dedicated to pre-Disney lore. He did do 2 videos about how the Clone Wars does not fit in quote unquote the Legends timeline, and it should now only remain in the Disney timeline, which I do agree. However, he's like done with talking like about TCW and how it hurt the lore overall. He's like done with that and the Filoni faction and stuff. And I get it. We all have a breaking point, and he is happy, producing these lore videos that are very uniquely done under his Mandalore, under his own his own niche, I guess you can say. So Soul Assassin says Kessis Fal was the one to bring the idea of recruiting non-Mandos into the culture. Correct. I love that you guys are like, before I even get to it, you guys are like, boom, boom, boom. I love it. Thank you guys. I love seeing people share, even in the chat, expanding on the conversation. Thank you. I'm going to take a sip here. My right side of my nose is like hurting a little bit. Sinus. I don't know if it's an infection or if I'm going to catch a cold. I don't know, but I don't want to. I feel good other than that part feeling yucky. Yeah, so very interesting. And then, like we get into, the Boba Fett, and how he becomes Mandalore. He made a pact, which Mandalorians, when they do make their pacts with each other, they have to hold their word, right? Because they have that, they're very honorable people. So he made his pact with Finn Shisa to become Mandalore, and Finn's like telling him, your father Jango basically made you to take take on his legacy after he's gone as Mandalore. So we get a little bit more expanded culture on that with the Fets in the modern times, I guess you could say, of Star Wars, that most people know. And so that's how he becomes Mandalore. He ends up helping the Jedi in New Jedi Order series on defeating the Vong, which took him a little while to do. And so there's a quick history in that. And then as we get into Legacy of the Force, we have him then training Jaina. We get more lore on Boba and what happened with his wife, Sentis, and how Jason or Darth Kaitis kills his daughter. And, he meets up with his granddaughter, who basically tries to hire him, he's not knowing who she is. So very interesting. And we also get some of the Skirata clan being involved, because Fett, even though doesn't have the same aging genetics that were bred into the clones as the other clones, and so we do have like the Knolls who age slowly as well, but or don't have the aging genetics that the other basic clones have. He is looking for a certain serum that can help with the aging, that also helps with disease wise and stuff. So that's another interesting one there as well. So let's see here. The complete history of the clan fet, yes. And let's see here. Subscribe to Meta Nerds. They have a lot of good Star Wars vids. There you go. So there's another one there. And so there we go. So let's go ahead and get into a little bit of the Chosen One so that we can start making our way in to these two Cringe Factor articles. I'm just going to leave this up here because it looks nice. So I'm going to leave the Rizonari up here as we talk about the Chosen One. So when we watch OT, we didn't really get, into the prophecy of the Chosen One. We just knew that Vader was redeemed. So we got the redemption part. The Chosen One wasn't basically something that was in George's mind at the time, even though he knew exactly, in a sense, where he was taking Anakin and his fall and stuff. The Chosen One came a little bit later as he started diving more into, opening, expanding that story in the PT era. So many say, oh, well, George never had anything planned because he didn't even have the Chosen One planned. No, he had an idea. He had a plan. Once he sat down and started expanding his ideas and his plan, his story for Anakin, that's when the Chosen One started coming out. So the OT basically was the redemption. It was Luke's story, in a sense, on him, in his hero's journey and becoming a Jedi, and also basically setting up a new Jedi order, I guess you can say, keeping to his word, to his masters about, continuing the Jedi path and training others. Then we finally get the PT era. And of course, George told many of the authors they could not expand or write into the PT era. So he gave them some guidelines and rules on what they couldn't do. And of course, if they're expanding on any movie characters, those arcs especially has to go through George, because those are the characters George made himself. So the direction, like Luke was being taken, the direction Han and Leia was being taken, and other characters had to be addressed by George, vetoed or approved by George, or even storylines too would be vetoed or approved that involved them, because it had to go with an idea of what George was wanting, right? But when we get into the PT era, they couldn't expand or write in that era. George specifically said, do not write in that era. Thrawn, he explains a little, or not Thrawn, Zahn, sorry, basically explained a little bit of like, it wasn't clear to him. So that's why he kind of spoke a little bit about the Clone Wars and the clones and stuff. However, that kind of backfired on him when George, got into the Clone Wars and got into the PT and stuff. But it wasn't it wasn't lore breaking, and it wasn't bad. So it was a very minor detail that that had discrepancies, and that's it. And there's a little bit of timeline, like a 2 years difference, because I did the research of when the Clone Wars started and what was mentioned in the Throne trilogy. So I did my homework on that as well. So I have 13 beautiful souls in the chat. Please hit that like button. Please let your social media sources know that I am live and that we are here chatting Star Wars. Soul Assassin says nothing left without Lucas's approval. LucasArts without Lucas's approval. Right. LucasArts and Lucas licensing, all of that. So anything that had to do with expanding the lore, George had to be privy to. And a lot of people don't realize that. And we still have a lot of anti-EU people who are like, he never got involved, blah, 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 blah. No, do your research, dude. Do your research. Robert de Costa. Hello, how are you doing? Thanks for joining. Let's see here. We're coming up on the hour. I'm going to check the poll. Robert, go vote. I'll give a little history here. So Gavar, it's not Kavar, it's Gavar Kai. This is the Lost Tribe of the Sith. This is another Sith faction that was kind of alienated. They crashed onto the planet Kish, and basically they kind of separated them from the rest of the universe because it was a very primitive planet. From there, their culture expanded and into the native species there, sentient species like humanoids there, and the Kasari, I guess it's called. Anyways, and then 44 ABY, we get more history of them in the Fate of the Jedi, and this is where this faction here that you're voting for come from. So Gabor Kai basically is a Sith Saber. So he is someone that is the ranking is Sith Saber. This kind of like a warrior faction, I guess you can say. And then we have Darish Vol, which is the Lord, the High Lord. So basically, is the Lord to everyone in on the planet. Um, and then we have Vistara Kai, and she basically is an apprentice at the time, and her father is the Gavar Kai. And then we have Tola Anax, and basically, I think she is also a saber too. And so these guys all interact with Luke Skywalker in one sense in the Fate of the Jedi. And if you heard about Abeloth, and stuff like that, there's this back and forth with Abeloth, and then some of them saying they're teaming with Luke to destroy her, which they betray him. There's a whole huge story twist in this, and it's very unique. So go ahead and vote. If you're not sure, then don't vote. I mean, I'm not going to pressure you to. Darish got 17%, and Vistara is at 75, and both Gavar and Tola are at. Oh, actually, Tola and Nox is at 8%. Gavar, nothing. I'm surprised with that. Holy crap. Okay, so we have 15 for Darish, Vistara Kai 77, and Tola at 8%, and Gavar is at 0. Wow, I'm very surprised about that. Let's see here. Might want to get Demajani on for a stream. He's a fan of the Lost Sith tribe, I remember correctly. I need to get him for talking EU. We tried to nail down a time at one time, and it just never happened. But I need to get him in for talking EU. Maybe we can elaborate more on the Lost Tribe of the Sith. Yeah. Let's see here, and here we go. So here's the Audible book. This happens, pre-PT time. So, and it goes way back in history in the timeline. I didn't get the year, but anyways, yeah. So that's the poll here. We're going to end it another about 5 or 4 minutes. So get in your vote. Gavar Kai got now voted for. So awesome. Oh, I ended it. Shit, wrong button. Okay, well, I ended it now. I went to go close it so I can or shrink it, and I pressed end. Never mind, we're ending it now. So sorry, you guys. Holy shit. Okay, anyways, so now the standings are Vestar Kai's at 71, Darish is 14, and Gavar and Tola are both tied at 7%. So Vestar Kai is basically the winner here. All right, let's go ahead and remove this, and let's get into now the chosen one, and then just talk a little bit about that. I was leading into that. So we have the PT where the chosen one prophecy was revealed, and it was Anakin Skywalker. We know how he was found, and you could say it was the will of the Force according to a lot of Jedi, but of course particularly to Qui-Gon. And the prophecy basically says someone, is, someone is, and it doesn't specifically say Jedi, but, basically someone will come in and destroy the Sith, basically. And I'm saying that in a very paraphrase type sentencing here, description here. And so I want to know what you guys feel about the chosen one prophecy, because this article is going to say how George failed to expand on it, I guess you can say. And that's not true. And we'll get into that. But I thought it was a very unique way of George introducing Anakin and how he joins the Sith and then later defeats the Sith. I thought it was a very great way of expanding Anakin's character-wise that way as well. And of course, we do have Yoda and Mace questioning the prophecy. And that's normal to characters. Just because they question it doesn't mean that Anakin wasn't, or the prophecy wasn't, going to be met. It's just them being, I guess, human or rational or doubtful or whatever you want to call it. And I'm questioning it, Yeah. So The chosen one prophecy. It also played into Anakin's character because he was the strongest Jedi Force user to be discovered as of yet, and that did kind of go to his ego. Qui-Gon, based, when he found Anakin, or when, I wouldn't say he found him, like in the sense like Anakin was lost, but when Anakin and him met and he discovered that this young boy is very strong in the Force, and then had a conversation with Shmi about the boy, about Annie or Anakin, about he was um, born of no man, basically. So basically, the Force helped create him, and Shmi was just the vessel in a sense. He was like a virgin of the Force, basically. It led more into the prophecy here, and that is what convinced Qui-Gon that he's the chosen one, which he is. That's no doubt. Even George has stated that. But of course, we're going to have people question it because that's just human nature to question things when you really don't when you're not sure. But then, of course, we have Palpatine that discovers this. And if you read the Darth Plagueis novel, they discover this, and there's conversation with Plagueis as well of like fearing Anakin because at the time of Plagueis manipulating midichlorians, doing his experiments and stuff like that, the Force retaliated and created Anakin. And Plagueis realized it. So Plagueis didn't create Anakin. He had indirect involvement because he was manipulating the Force. The Force countered him. And that also goes into the prophecy because the chosen one does defeat the Sith, right? And that's what scared the hell out of Plagueis. And it also, Dooku questioned it, of course. He's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Kind of, that's Dooku's nature. But then Sidious too kind of scared him, but then he was intrigued. And once, they brought Anakin to the temple and they accepted him, and Obi-Wan started training him. And of course, I'm skipping over a lot of like nuanced story there about like how Qui-Gon died and stuff, and I'm not going to really go into that. We already know what happened. That's when Sidious started really keep an eye on him. And it's even apparent. He tells that to young Anakin. I'm going to keep an eye on your career. That's kind of creepy, isn't that? When you see him pat him on his head as he's passing by, I'm going to keep an eye on your career. That's so fucking creepy. That creeped me out then, and it still creeps me out now. But when you get into the lore and you get more into the movies and even reading the novels, the comics, and what have you, with Anakin growing and seeing how Palpatine's manipulating him, it goes more into that. It's like, ooh, this guy, you knew what was going on. You knew what was going to happen. He was going to start seducing him to the dark side. And he sure did. He made Anakin doubt the order. He made Anakin very prideful about his abilities and his strength in the Force. God, Sidious was so manipulative. So manipulative and so smart about it. Crazy stuff. Anyway, so we have that. The chosen one. So, and this is going to go into the segue here pretty soon. As we go into we'll do that article first, and then we'll go back into the one about the Mandalorians, since we're on this topic and it's very fresh, and my point is going into that article as well. So we have the chosen one, who the Jedi still kind of questioned, whom Palpatine manipulated, and Anakin being frustrated because he's seen himself, being more powerful, but he doesn't know why they don't allow him to be master or advanced as quickly. But then we find out why. And the reason why that he didn't get advanced as quickly into masters, because even though he's very strong in the Force and picks up on the techniques that he is capable of doing very fast, he was still very immature. And you really don't want an immature master sitting on the council, even though they're strong in the Force. But he didn't see it that way. Anakin didn't see it that way. And so, there's many fans that'll side with Anakin saying, well, yeah, he was really strong in the Force. Why didn't they make him a master? Well, you got to realize that the maturity, the mental capability and the maturity wasn't there yet. Yeah, they appeased him by making him the first knight on the council. But that was all political too. That was all political positioning, which the council, which was one of their downfall here. And I'm kind of going out of the prophecy range, but it's still part of Anakin. It's still part of him being the chosen one. And the prophecy doesn't really share, like, the person still has to remain a Jedi. It just says that they defeat the Sith. And so when you have Obi-Wan saying, you're supposed to defeat the Sith, not join them, that was kind of basically a little bit of ignorance, thinking that a person has to stay in the light to defeat. Which, in a sense, he did come back to the light to help defeat. But that was through the redemption, love, and compassion of his son, Luke Skywalker. And this is all within the Chosen One prophecy, the Chosen One arc for Anakin. I didn't even realize that. Thank you for pointing that out. I stand corrected. I always thought that he was a master. Yeah. But thank you. I have to look more into that now. Yeah. So anyways, going back to this. We, this article here that we're going to get into, but just the Chosen One arc in its own, is part of what makes Anakin, right? It's a part of his arc. And it intertwines with everything that happens with him, to him, and what is about him. The Chosen One arc, the Chosen One prophecy, just isn't just one little tiny storyline that's on its own. And so we're going to get into that article now. So let me go ahead and get us going. Let's see here.
So uncivilized.
Uncivilized. And yes, that's exactly what that is. It's so uncivilized. So let me go ahead and switch tabs here on this. And we'll go into... so this is it. This is it. George Lucas mishandled Star Wars Chosen One prophecy. Where is the evidence that George mishandled the Chosen One prophecy? Like, how was it before George got it? See how this doesn't make sense? It's like you have to have something prior to George as evidence that he mishandled something, right? It already has to be exist, and then when George comes in to take care of it or expand on it, then is mishandled, right? This Chosen One prophecy comes from George. How can he mishandle it when it is exactly the way he wanted it to be? God, these people don't make sense. And this is by Alex Bat or Bate or whatever, or Bat. Anakin Skywalker was a chosen one in the Star Wars prequels, but George Lucas didn't execute the prophecy well enough to make it compelling. All right, you guys. So here's the number one question here. George Lucas didn't execute the prophecy well enough to make it compelling. Did you think it was compelling? Do you think that the Chosen One arc under Anakin was compelling? Because it was one of the driving forces of Anakin, of Anakin's character, and how he interacted with people and how he was seen and handled by all those around him in the Jedi Order and even outside, like Sidious and stuff. So, what do you think about that? Was it compelling to you? And what are the evidence that it wasn't compelling? Like, what is the evidence that led to that it was mishandled? Whoops, wrong one. Um, Let me see what you guys have to say before I start getting into this more. Go back to the chats. Let's see here. Thank you, Soul Assassin. All right. Let's see here. Let me go back to the article then, since no one said anything just yet. So, even though George Lucas crafted the Star Wars prequels with the idea of a prophecy influencing Darth Vader's fate, the concept of a chosen one was mishandled by the movies, by the movies as they progressed. So, no, George, first it was George mishandling, now the movies are mishandling that. I think you need to choose your words wisely in how you describe this. Instead of enriching the doomed story of Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One prophecy introduced in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, served to confuse and muddle the story more. What? How did it serve to confuse and muddle the story more? That's when it was introduced. How did it muddle the story when it was first introduced? It was already known that Anakin would become Darth Vader, so the prophecy should have added embellishments to his fall. It did added. I just discussed it not mostly in depth, to his fall to the dark side, rather than a complicated or complacent take on destiny. It wasn't complacent take on destiny. It was a lot. It was his arc. It was intertwined in his arc because of the prophecy's lack of explanations. Oh, you're one of them. In the newer generations, you have to have everything explained to you on screen. Do you guys notice that as of lately? Everything has to be explained on screen. There's no nuance. There's no show, don't tell. You have to tell and show because people can't comprehend. They're too dim-witted to comprehend. The excitement around Anakin's potential as a Jedi Chosen One fizzled out. It never fizzled out. It basically, I'm going to say this word, it's basically climaxed in Revenge of the Sith with Anakin / Vader and Obi-Wan's duel. Instead of elaborating on exactly how he would alter the galaxy's fate, it doesn't have to elaborate because we already know how it alters the galaxy's fate. The movies focused more on his personality traits and relationships with other characters. That's what is supposed to happen. And because it focused on his personality and his relationships, all of that intertwined with how he was a chosen one and how he was manipulated, how the Order seen him, how they doubted it, all of that. In retrospect, all of the mentions of the Chosen One prophecy early on in the prequel trilogy have an anticlimactic ring to them, considering the lack of payoff. What lack of payoff? We have a very emotional Obi-Wan Kenobi pleading to him. You were the chosen one. You were my brother. That's not a lack of payoff. That is basically, like I said, a very dramatic climatic scene of everything seemed to go dark. That's not a lack of payoff. Everything went dark for a reason. Everything happened for a reason. You know, we see the Jedi lose faith, like the remaining Jedi lose faith and taking that faith and hope into the children. Oh my God. I don't know why they have her on that. She has nothing to do with it. Although Anakin was generally acknowledged as the Jedi's chosen one, the films never officially confirmed that he was the person to whom the prophecy was referring. The prophecy is a prophecy just for that. They're not going to exactly say beat for beat who is going to meet the prophecy. Does this person not understand what a prophecy means or is? Holy shit. Okay, this person is an idiot. Holy crap. Okay, yeah, this is cringe. I read this already before, but you're still getting the same remarks from me from last time I read it. when it was presented to me. Holy fucking cow. Okay, only Qui-Gon and Palpatine ever clearly vocalized their beliefs in Anakin's importance before his fall to the dark side. So only Qui-Gon and Palpatine ever clearly vocalized their belief in Anakin. Well, yeah, Palpatine basically used it to manipulate him. That doesn't mean he really fully believed. Maybe, maybe not. But then when you get into Darth Palpatine, or Darth Palpatine, Darth Plagueis novel, it shares why. Because if he can manipulate this person in the Force that's the strongest ever so far they ever encountered, and he knows that the Force made him to counter what him and his master were doing with experimenting with midichlorians and stuff. Of course, he's going to want this guy to join him, so then that the prophecy wouldn't be met. But little did he know that it was still going to be met. And with Qui-Gon, yes. And it's okay for other people to doubt it in the order. Because again, it doesn't specifically say, because prophecies don't specifically say beat by beat on how the prophecy is going to be met and who is going to meet the prophecy, who's going to, fulfill the prophecy. Because prophecies don't work that way. Throughout the several quotes and interviews, it's been confirmed that Lucas intended Anakin to be the chosen. Oh yeah, duh. That's what he set up. It was apparent, even though Yoda and Mace questioned it. It was apparent. It was in the story. Everybody knew that. But for some reason, never explicitly says as much in the movies. It did. Did you fucking watch the movie? I even understood it from first watching the first movie, the second movie, the third, as it started coming out. Holy shit, what the hell? Obi-Wan's last word to Anakin after their duel on Mustafar are also close to are as close to any confirmation in the series ever gives. Oh my god, here we go. I'm just gonna keep reading and then I'll go to the chat and see what you guys have to say, okay? In fact, by the end of the prequel trilogy, there was confirmation as to exactly how Anakin had eventually brought balance to the Force. Really? We already know how, yeah, that balance came, like when you first watched the prequel trilogy, you knew how balance came to the Force. Oh my god. Some theories circulated that the idea that Anakin balanced the Force by balancing the number. Oh, fucking here we go. I'm highlighting this. The rule, okay, for balancing the number of Jedi to match the Sith. What the fuck? And I hate this. And I think this is kind of what the direction Disney Star Wars is trying to go. No, the balance is not equal this and that. No. Even George said himself, the balance is the light side. And the light side, you want to stay in balance with that, but it's very, very hard to maintain. That's why it's easy to go dark, because it's such an easy, seductive path. While others suggested that concept refers to death of Darth Sidious and the end of the Galactic Empire, each theory requires a different interpretation of what it really meant to balance the Force. Here we go. Since the Chosen One prophecy itself was never even revealed in the movies, it was revealed in the movies. We just didn't get it beat by beat, word by word, like in the documentation that you can find in the Jedi Path book. They did talk about the prophecy, and they did word it in short what it meant. Did you not fucking watch the movie? There was only Qui-Gon's word that Anakin fit the description. That is called knowing what the prophecy is and going with the word of the prophecy. Just because they didn't do beat by beat on how someone qualifies as for the prophecy, even the council agreed that he fit, even though they doubted him, because it wasn't that they doubted him in a sense. They did question it, yes. But most of their disagreement, I guess you can say, was Anakin was too old to be trained, that he had too much conflict in his mind, too much emotion in his mind, too much fear in his mind. That's what made them skeptical about Anakin. It wasn't necessarily the prophecy. All right, other theories point to Anakin's son Luke being the one who ultimately balanced the Force. Nope, he just redeemed. He didn't kill anybody. He was on death himself by Sidious. And then basically they go on with the Force when he helped Darth Vader find redemption. No, because he again didn't kill the Sith. Vader returned to Anakin, and we've seen that develop as Anakin or as Vader and Luke started interacting more and more throughout the OT. We've seen Luke make progress into the psyche of Darth Vader. And you know what was redeeming? Was the love. Love can either make you fall with attachment and stuff, and that's the tragedy behind Anakin / Darth Vader. Love can basically go against you if you go through attachment where you go into the dark side, or love can redeem you by learning that, you don't have to hold on to it as an attachment, that you can just, unconditionally love, like Anakin says in Attack of the Clone, without the attachment. And that's what happened. Loved redeemed him. Loved defeated him or made him turn dark, but also redeemed him back to the light. That was a beautiful thing. It had nothing to do with the prophecy whatsoever. But that had to do with Luke redeeming his father. Okay. The point remains that after over 54 or 45 years, the identity of something as important as the franchise's chosen one shouldn't be surrounded by so much doubt and confusion. There was never any doubt, and there was never any confusion whatsoever. And then there's this right here. The chosen one was largely irrelevant after the Phantom Menace. This just keeps on getting worse and worse as we go along. Not only did the movies fail to confirm that Anakin was the chosen one, they confirmed that he was the chosen one. What the fuck? Okay. Breathe, Lord, breathe. I need to go on some breath practices for yoga after this article. But the prophecy itself went unmentioned for most of the series. No, they mentioned it. They talked about it. Though Qui-Gon made a huge deal about Anakin and the prophecy, his death, it's like he's rehashing everything he said previously. The death marked the end of the Jedis and discussions about it. After the Phantom Menace, Anakin just became a Jedi. No, he was still the chosen one. He was still the most powerful Jedi ever. Rather than a potential prophecy fulfilled. What do you want them to do? Like praise him? Lay flowers at his feet? Make him Grand Master? Is that what you were expecting them to do? Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, focused instead on details that would be important once Anakin became Darth Vader. What? His range and raw power. No, it was important to see how much. Yeah, it's important to see how much he grows and develops in the Force, since he is deemed with the most midichlorians they've ever seen. Frustrations with the Jedi and romance with Padme, but not his role as chosen one. Again, the chosen one arc was intertwined throughout. And of course, Padme is not gonna know about the chosen one as much, or they're not gonna really discuss it much. And yeah, but they do talk about it still in the Attack of the Clones. The Star Wars prequels centered on the rise and fall of Anakin. That's part of the Chosen One arc. As he became, like I said, it doesn't have to be like in your face explaining beat by beat every other time someone talks to him. Oh yeah, you're the chosen one. Cool. Okay, so when are we going to defeat the Sith? Blah, blah, blah. They discussed in Revenge of the Sith as well on Anakin being the chosen one. Every single movie of the prequel trilogy discussed it at some way, shape, or form. They even, discuss Anakin and them bring up, like, I should be the one going in and taking care of this situation, resting Palpatine or whatever, because I'm the chosen one, basically. I mean, I'm paraphrasing and exaggerating a little bit, but still. All right. The original trilogy shifted the focus away from Vader and put the narrative on Luke Skywalker's effort to defeat the Empire and redeem. Yeah, they have. This is where you get into the rebellion from the dark side and people not tolerating like the oppression that the Empire put upon them, right? Like the species and stuff. The prophecy, and then also redeeming the father, which, George, even though he necessarily didn't have the chosen one planned during the OT, the chosen one prophecy still seamlessly goes into the OT, because even though it's not mentioned, which you don't have to have everything mentioned beat by beat all the time to understand that this person's still a chosen one. What was Anakin supposed to wear throughout the PT and Vader throughout the OT? A label on his chest saying, I am the chosen one? Anyways, the prophecy is never mentioned in the original, of course, but the actions taken by Luke under the direction of Obi-Wan and Yoda and even Darth Vader point to the importance of balance within the Force. The idea of destiny has always been intertwined in the original Star Wars trilogy as well. Excuse me. So the prequels introduction of the prophecy should have fit right in. It still fits in. We still understand. There's no need to talk about the chosen one because it's not necessary. And at this point, Obi-Wan and Yoda believe that Anakin was a lost cause. So they feel that at the time of the OT, that Anakin's lost, and so is a chance of the prophecy destroying the Sith. So they didn't think Luke was even the chosen one, but they knew because he came from Anakin and even Leia that they were strong enough with training to defeat. They were the hope, but they weren't putting them in as chosen ones because they weren't. Particularly after the release of the Star Wars sequels, I hate this part. The chosen one prophecy has only become more confusing. Of course, because they brought that motherfucking Palpatine. Of course it's going to be confusing. It was confusing in Dark Empire after the PT came out. What do you think? Holy shit. Does this person not know Star Wars very well? Does this person not comprehend the movies very, very well? Because I know they're specifically only talking about the movies, but shit. Come on now. Did you even watch the movies before you wrote this article? If Anakin was meant to bring balance to the Force, why is Darth Sidious still on the dark side driven Force 30 years after Anakin's death? Because they fucking brought him back in. It didn't make sense, particularly as much in Dark Empire after the PT. It doesn't make sense now. And the Dark Empire is a lot more coherent story than this Disney trilogy. Okay. The new theories have been created interpreting the event of the sequels as Rey being the chosen one. Oh my fucking hell, yes, I know. This shit stinks. But the movies, once again, never actually say so. The movie said so in the PT. The OT didn't have to elaborate on it because we already knew. And even before the PT came out, that really didn't matter. But nothing points to Rey. Nothing whatsoever. There's no one discovering her and saying she might be the chosen one. There's no one doubting that she is the chosen one. There's no one questioning. There's no one saying you are the chosen one, but you still have to remain a Jedi Knight. Like they didn't really say that in the PT. I'm being hyperbolic right now. Because she's not the motherfucking chosen one. This makes a bit of sense considering Lucas initially intended for Leia to be the sequel's chosen. And there we go. So we're going into the interview about the PT, and then he talks about his ideas for a sequel trilogy, where he does state that, Leia is eventually the chosen one. Well, Leia was the chosen one for renewing the government, recreating the new republic. Not a Sith, a person who's destroying the Sith, because she never had a hand in it personally. Her brother did. She didn't. And I want to elaborate more on that little bit of sequel information that Luke gives in his interview about the PT in the archives, the Star Wars archives, the prequel trilogy one. Yeah. But maybe I'll do a video. Maybe we'll talk about it on Caff Chat in the future. Though the movies tend to avoid the discussion of the Chosen One and the prophecy surrounding him, the Clone Wars never shied away from pushing Anakin's story into the territory of examining his role as someone who will eventually destroy or drastically impact the fate of the galaxy. George did that in the PT. So why are you giving Filoni credit but not George? The whole PT shares how Anakin's storyline will impact the galaxy. His fall impacts the motherfucking galaxy. His seduction to the dark side, isn't it, results in the impact of the galaxy going forward. His discovery impacts. Why? Because we get Darth Maul. We get they reveal the Sith. In season 3, Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka fall in mysterious distress call. Oh, yeah, we're going into the strange planet where they encounter physical representations of the Force. The Mortis arc stresses the complicated interpretation of balance between the light and dark. That's not, they are just Force beings embodied in human form of each faction of the Force. And the Father is in between, but that doesn't mean that's where the balance is at. And Anakin as a chosen one, and that's even revealed and discussed, that he's not the chosen one as to being the Father. He's a chosen one as being the Sith. So I don't think people quite understand that. And I think there was just an idea of giving some Force entities that they discover that have some sort of influence or some form of embodiment of the Force in all those factions. And later on, we get Abeloth. We talked about Abeloth. We get Abeloth, who is the person of chaos, the Father, the person of balance or normality, I guess you can say. And then you have the good and the light. Those are just embodiments of those factions of the Force. That's it. That's all. Beyond their basic representation, the symbolism of Anakin's role as a chosen one got more complicated as the layers of the episode reveal its many different sides. The events of Anakin's future are mirrored by the characters of Mortis, but his individual role is left up to interpretation. Didn't you say that about the PT, about his it being up interpretation about the chosen one? Okay, though the episode seems to clearly lean into the prophecy and Anakin's unavoidable fate, the events are forgotten by the character after they leave the planet. Of course, they do, because it is like kind of the nether rounds of the Force there. Star Wars has never limited itself to the screen. The novels that enrich the Star Wars continuity or Star Wars continue to explore the many details that Lucas planted in the series, and the Chosen One prophecy is no exception. The books like Master and Apprentice, oh my God, you're going into this bullshit Disney crap. I'm not going to read that here. Anyways, because that's irrelevant, but the Chosen One in the novels, in the real lore, the original lore, you have it expanded. Even in Fate of the Jedi, Luke learns more about his father with Mortis. What happened, and because of Abeloth, right? And so he questions, but then he also, doesn't believe it or whatever. I lost my train of thought there. Sorry. But anyways, he basically questions the fact that was his father to replace the father of the ones. And the thing is like, not really, that his true path was to defeat the Sith at the time. And that the balance, there is the force, yes, but the balance is maintaining the light. But you do have to have some darkness because that's in person's character. We always, and I'm going to say this in real life verse and that, and I know I hate putting real life in there, but as a being, and you see this in Star Wars, you always have a positive and a negative side of yourself. And it's all by choice. And that's how the light and the dark is. So there we go. So I'm not going to go into this book here. Well, Lucas clearly had, because that novel has nothing to do with original lore and stuff like that. So anyways, well, Lucas clearly had big ideas concerning, and see, they're trying to highlight this book, so we're not going to go there. Well, Lucas clearly had big ideas concerning the Chosen One prophecy. The way the concept was executed only served as to undermine its effect. There were many ways this concept could have been explored. Okay, so I read through all this article. Why couldn't you give us a way George executed it wrong? Like examples and how he could have done it right by giving us examples. You're just talking through your ass. And clearly you haven't watched the movies, or maybe you just didn't comprehend. So let me see what you guys have to say, and then we'll get into the Mandalorian stuff. Whoops, wrong one. Let's see here. I got to go back to the correct window. Oh, goodness. We have 17 beautiful souls. Thank you guys for watching. Let me see what you guys have to say here. Oh, boy. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Lucas didn't make Anakin a Mary Sue. The comics and the books showed he had flaws and made mistakes. Correct. I cried in the theater when he went Sith. I guess that's not compelling enough. Correct, Iris. And they don't realize, like, the focus, the stories wasn't necessarily the focus of the Chosen One prophecy. It was of Anakin's rise and fall, right? The Chosen One was just one of the interwoven storylines within his arc that contributed to it. And hello, Iris, how you doing? Lack of imagination. Laugh out loud. The Phantom Menace didn't have enough exposition. The opening crawl should have been longer. Yeah, so they can read it and it could be explained. Well, what is this writer smoking? I don't know, and I don't want any of it. If it's going to make you dumb, I don't want none of it. Rage-induced article, correct. And I don't rage like a lot of people. I kind of keep some stuff in. I'm like, ugh, but you guys know my rage. Prophecies are vague in general, correct. Wait till the writer learns that Bane was the Sith He'll need a new pair of pants. And let's see. Movie poster for episode 1, Little Annie with Vader's shadow. Come on now. It's obvious, right? His fall was, the arc of him and his fall also was part of not part of the prophecy, but that was intertwined, interwoven. I don't want to say part of, but it was intertwined, interwoven. I'm guessing, and also the Jedi with the prophecy was also interwoven with the prophecy in a sense of them not believing it. So they kind of, I wouldn't say they mishandled Anakin, but he was kind of misunderstood in a sense. And there was a little bit of arrogance on the Jedi Council's side in a sense. But then I also agreed with them on that he was kind of immature in the mindset to become a master as well. So yeah, maybe they could have handled him a little bit better. Who knows? But a lot of how Anakin acted towards the council was from manipulation of Palpatine to him. The movie it's so epic, yes. That's one of them where you only had minimum characters inside the poster. There wasn't so much going on, but just with young Anakin and his shadow said enough. That was right there, like that was a really well done movie poster. You didn't have a clusterfuck of every single person inside, who are going to be in the movie. It was a simple little young Anakin and the shadow. Foreshadowing. Epic. epic stuff there. Disney shills want to confuse people as much as they are. And I don't want nothing of it. It's so laughable. Oh God, we're coming up in 15 minutes until the show ends, so we need to get into that other article. Having the same number of Jedi and Sith to balance the Force kind of falls in line with the idiots like this commie socialist ideology. Sorry, they think everyone is the same and people aren't expected, are exceptional, are unique. Correct. Let's see here. Hey Stig, how are you doing? And good morning to you. I love how all the haters love the Monday morning quarterback and criticize George. People like this schmuck who can't even write a coherent article, let alone two epic trilogies, right? Lucas explains why Anakin was a chosen one. There you go. TCW did a lot of damage to the lore. Correct. And Christopher Baker, how are you doing? Laura, what's this about the chosen one and Cringe Factor? Yep, that's it. Let's see here. Best to ever do it. Let's see here. And there were hundreds of Jedi and only 2 Sith. After prophecy balanced 2 Jedi and 2 Sith. I think it was done okay. Not really. There were other Jedi out there, and 2 and 2 does not mean balance. Let's see here. And hello, Miss Smart Muses with her lovely hand wave and rose. Now let's get into, you guys can still continue a little bit more on this article, this Cringe Factor article about George Lucas doing the Chosen One prophecy, executing it not well at all, whatever. But we're going to get into the Mandalorian one, and then we're going to start closing out because I have somewhere to be here soon. So here we go. So I'm just going to get into this a little bit, but how Mandalorians killed the Star Wars expanded universe. Get this, how Mandalorians killed the Star Wars universe. So this is the reason why I wanted to touch bases on the Mandalorian culture for lore talk, a portion of, Caff chat today. Let me close this article out. But this guy, Thomas Bacon, basically, and I've heard people say that he knows his lore pretty well, what have you. I don't know. I've questioned it many times. But he says the Mandalorians killed the Star Wars expanded universe. The Mandalorians became the breaking point for the Star Wars expanded universe, setting the stage for Disney to change the franchise forever. So they're saying Disney changed the franchise forever. Of course they did. They retconned everything, and they tossed out the expanded universe. Then they even contradicted the movies, since they're starting to change the direction of the movies. So there you go. So if you're praising that they changed the franchise forever as a good thing, fuck you. That's all I have to say. Fuck you. There's a strange sense in which the Mandalorians killed the Star Wars expanded universe. Okay. Star Wars has always, I read that wrong. Star Wars has always been I hate that fucking word. It's not transmedia. It's not transforming media. It is multimedia, meaning that there are many media sources coming together. Trans is meaning they're going separate. They're moving away from each other, transforming into something different. For fuck's sake, get that right. The first tie-in books, Alan Dean Foster's Splinter of the Mind's Eye, was published in 1978 before the release of The Empire Strikes Back. But this so-called expanded universe, don't you love that? This so-called, quote-unquote, expanded universe only really became a hit in the 1990s. People loved it even in the 80s with the quirky spin-off comics from Marvel. Everybody had fun with it. Now, this so-called expanded universe that Bacon says, quotes this as, it became a hit, or it became a huge focus because of how well Zahn's Thrawn trilogy was perceived. And that's where the company then said, hey, wait a minute. Fans do care about continuity. They do care about cohesive timeline. let's go ahead and give them what they want. Oh my God, that's an interesting concept for a franchise. Giving fans what they want, like seeing the reaction of fans and then saying, oh wow, if we give them more what we want, we're going to earn more money. Oh my God, that is such a business growing beneficial concept. Giving your clients what they want so that you earn more money. Wow. Anyways, after the Timothy Zahn's Thrawn trilogy, the Star Wars franchise soon expanded across the mediums, including New York Times best-selling novel, comics, and computer games. It was still expanding across the mediums before Zahn's. It just became a hit because his writing and his characters were well received. And then, as the decade came to an end, George Lucas returned to make the prequel trilogy. Lucas didn't want to be boxed in by Star Wars Expanded Universe. Here we go. I'm going to read that again. And then the decade came to an end. George Lucas returned to make the prequel trilogy. He didn't want to be boxed in by the Star Wars Expanded Universe, although he took ideas he liked, such as the Galactic Capital Coruscant, created by Zahn, but introduced on the big screen in episode 1, or basically in the whole trilogy. But Bacon, if you were so privy and you knew the lore so well, you would know that George was never boxed in. In fact, his world building came from the expanded universe. So it wasn't just this one planet name. He even collaborated with writers that he allowed to come in and write when he started expanding on the movies, the prequel trilogy, so that they cross-referenced each other. And I don't think people realize that. When they said, oh, well, George didn't want to be boxed in, and he contradicted a lot of the EU with the PT, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm sorry, I'm cussing a lot today. I'm sorry. What the fuck are you talking about? If you really knew the lore, you would know. And if you really got behind the scenes, you would really know that he collaborated with writers when he allowed writers to come in as he was creating the PT. And then so you have reference of novel events, and the novels came out first. So you had reference of novel events mentioned in the movies because they were working together. They weren't separate. He wasn't boxed in. If he was boxed in, he would not have considered, and the EU would be a whole separate timeline, and he wouldn't even use it to world build. He wasn't boxed in. In general, he had no qualms about contradicting, and here we go, ideas from the EU. He did not contradict. There were slight little errors here and there from the Thrawn trilogy because Zahn was told not to really expand on the PT era. He still included vague descriptions of the Clone Wars, which was minor discrepancies, but that wasn't contradicting. Lucas adopted a tiered approach to canon. Lucas' own productions were G level, God level. I don't know why he said God level. It's not fucking God level. But anyways, you could kind of see if that you want to say that the creator, God, whatever. But anyways, or George level. I like to call it movie level, and I think there's a lot of other people that agree that it was movie level. Absolute canon, and anything in EU could be retconned, rewritten, or dropped entirely based on Lucas's story. He had say in everything. So he didn't have to write something, or he didn't have to create a movie to rewrite or drop any lore, story, whatever through a movie. He could just say, I don't want that story, and veto the novel. So this guy's really making George sound like he was very anti-EU, and he was not. This naturally led to the great deal of tension in the franchise, but an uneasy status quo gradually developed. So an uneasy. It was only uneasy towards the end once TTCW came through, and we've seen a lot of contradictions and a lot of fans, up in arms about it. This would last through most of the 2000s until the Mandalorians became a canon-busting problem. Here we go. Canon-busting problems. I think we're going to go over which is kind of fine with me. I was going to jump in on a yoga Zoom live class, but I can jump in later. A British author hailing from Wiltshire, Karen Travis became fascinated by the idea of exploring the Mandalorian culture. So yeah, that was her baby, and I am very thankful that she was interested in the Mandalorian culture and the Mandalorians and how she written them in. That she created a whole language, a whole culture, all of this. One of the most clever EU authors, I would say, not my favorite, but she's up there. But she's like one of the most lore clever writers and stuff. This led to a popular series of novels focused on the clone troopers during the Clone Wars, who were shown embracing their Mandalorian heritage. Travis followed in the footsteps of some of the greatest science fiction and fantasy writers, designing a new language and a rich, layered society. The books were bestsellers, and Travis soon joined other writers in penning arcs set after Return of the Jedi with Mandalorian resurgence. All right, Travis was or wasn't universally admired. Here we go. She clearly loved the Mandalorian culture she had designed. Of course she is. She put her heart and soul into it. Why not? I mean, if you didn't love it, then you wouldn't have expanded it as much. She had designed for more than anything else in Star Wars, and couldn't help contrasting the Mandalorians with the Jedi. Yeah, they were enemies, and that was a wonderful contrast, with the Jedi tending to come up short in the comparison. Yes, because the Mandalorians and Jedi were enemies, and she was given point of views mainly through the clone troopers, aka Mandalorian culture. They were enemies. They didn't trust the Jedi. They were bred not to trust the Jedi because of Order 66, in a sense. Do you not get the story? I sure did, and I thought it was compelling. Yeah, we had Jedi that did question, their roles as using the clone armies, and also their direction on being soldiers. Even Mace questioned that, and Lucas written that. Travis was unusually active in Star Wars forums too. Good for her. People love that. And could be harsh and abrasive to those who weren't as enamored with the Mandalorians as she was. She became increasingly controversial as the years went on. And then Star Wars, well, yeah, I think because, a certain cowboy hat cartoonist kind of created that. Anyways, and then Star Wars changed once again when George Lucas came out of retirement and worked for he never was in retirement. He never retired. He was still part of his business. He was still active and put his input in for any novels and stuff that came out pertaining to the lore, especially towards the movie characters. I don't know where George went during that time. Like, what retirement was he on? Because I don't remember him anything saying that he was in retirement before the Clone Wars. It didn't take long for the Mandalorians to be appearing in Star Wars, the Clone Wars, and in 2010 it became apparent his interpretation of the Mandalorians were very different to Travis's. That was also Filoni. And I don't remember, because I haven't watched the Clone Wars in a very long time. Was that in season 2 or 3? Can someone tell me in the chat? The Mandalorian arc. Was that season 2 or 3? I don't remember. I really don't remember which season it was. There were some superficial similarities, but the portrayals were just too contradictory. And according to the tiered canon rules of Star Wars, Travis books felt as though they were being invalidated. Travis herself soon cut ties with Lucasfilm due to a contract or contact. She probably meant contract dispute. But the timing of her departure seemed symbolic. I know we did cover this like a couple of years back with like Open Air. I think it was on his channel. Um, on that contract and then what she had to say, and we opened up her a link that has a lot of her information about her dispute regarding the direction that they were going and how they wanted her to rewrite her lore or rewrite one of the books she was creating in her Republic series. But let me check the chat. I want to see if you guys answered my question because I don't remember. Season 2, you believe? Yeah, and I thought it was season 2, but I wasn't sure. I was also doubting that. And we know that George Lucas was involved up until season 3. And then, the Red Tails happened and he was, taking care of that. That was his production as well. He put Filoni in charge and stuff. But when I was going over the Mandalorian culture and I read you guys those 4 factions of Mandalorians, this is where it doesn't hurt. And I don't know where is it at? I did have it on my notes. Did I take my notes down? This is where the retconning happened to where, and I wish that they would have done this and still saved Karen from leaving, but there was too much going on during that time, and that's all I'm going to say. So this is where the retcon happened. So the new Mandalorians basically was Satine's people that we see in TCW. Of course, they were very big pacifists, right? And I think I remembered Filoni, I believe, and I think even Leland Chi saying that they're just another faction. And then so when we get into the Jedi, the Holocron database, and we get into the lore, the continuity personnel of Lucasfilm, they had to really course correct here. And they did. So they still allowed what was seen with the new Mandalorians and even the Death Watch to occur. And we know that there's times where Filoni basically pulled something from the EU and changed it and added it in without the proper context of the character or whatever. And and then he lies about it and gets called out and stuff like that. But anyways, I'm not going to get into that kind of politics here. But my point is that we have the new faction, the new Mandalorians, who are pacifists, and then we have the Death Watch, and then we have the true Mandalorians, and we have the Mandalorian protectors. So the new Mandalorians went against the Super Commando Codex and also against the Resonari, if you haven't noticed. And this is where the true Mandalorian and the Mandalorian protectors would destroy the new Mandalorians for going against the culture. And I wish we'd have got that. Instead, it was ignored and retconned, and we never seen it again. Just like the Darksaber was introduced in TCW, we never seen it before previous TCW, and we never seen it after. So everything seemed to have been ignored in TCW going forward with retconning and course correcting what TCW did. And I think that's kind of funny, because if this was above the novels and T tier, like they try to say, the TCW is EU. But if this was one of them that can just retcon or change everything and more relevant than the novels, it sure got ignored in a lot of sense. Although we got the Abeloth story, which kind of retconned a lot in that concept as well. But anyways, I'm going to go back to the article. Let's see here. Canon in Star Wars has always been controversial. Lucas' prequel trilogy had retconned many details. Here we're going through this again. And entire stories have been branded non-canon infinities. Where is your proof? The comics? I mean, the only thing infinities are those what-if spin-off series that we have. Everything else still remain the same. Like Thrawn Trilogy, which has that minor discrepancies, it's not infinities. Nothing was put in infinities after prequel trilogy. But there has been nothing on this scale before an entire best-selling series of books has. And even like the Republic series, Commando series, is not infinities. Entire best-selling series of books had been apparently dropped. The uneasy status quo underpinning an expanding universe has been pushed to breaking point. So here we go. Here is this anti-EU rhetoric that, again, and I mentioned this before in the beginning, these articles shares, and it goes with the person, that Jake guy, who it was a part of, or maybe a part of, the editing team for Disney Lucasfilm, and he bashes the EU. This is in the same line here. In 2011, Disney CEO Bob Iger arranged to meet with George Lucas, in which he raised the idea Disney buying Lucasfilm. Lucas initially wanted to be called the Pixar deal, and so we have that. Disney acquired Lucasfilm in 2012. The House of Mouse moved ahead with their own version of sequels and seemed to have spent quite a time trying to decide what to do with the EU. Finally, in 2014, alongside official announcement connected to the sequels, Lucasfilm confirmed that EU was effectively over. Do you notice that he doesn't say non-canon? Committed, so it's over. So meaning they they try to decanonize it. They're not using it anymore. They can't change what was canon, what isn't, because they're not the original creator. Committing to the old shared universe, they only can now deem whatever they produced as non-canon to their lore. But the overall original Star Wars lore, only George can do that. He's a creator. Committing to the old shared universe would lock Disney. Oh my God, Disney owned plans for the sequels. No, it wouldn't. You could have made the sequels like right after Crucible. It doesn't lock you in. You can just expand off of what was created before, just like you're doing now with all your EU with your Disney trilogy. And the lore was becoming too vast and sprawling. Because they can't hire creative writers who know how to work around and use what came before. Every film would make Star Wars rules of canon even more complicated. How so? Requiring fixes or the decision to toss more books and comics out. Rather than deal with this confusion, you can work it out, because authors that had come in that never wrote for the EU before, as they started expanding in George's timeline, still had it easy enough to work with the continuity. You just have to have a great team like Leland Chi and Sue Stoney, which I question Leland Chi now. I just think he's a token observer. That's it, and he can't do anything. Because if he could, he's sure not maintaining continuity like he did before. That's all I have to say about him. Rather than deal with this confusion, Lucasfilm effectively decided to start again, branding the EU legends and announcing the new status quo. So I'm not going to get onto that. Looking back, Karen Travis' Mandalorian books feel like a crisis point in Star Wars expanding universe. No, they weren't. They expanded it beautifully. TCW was the crisis. That's what you proved. Not that Travis's Mandalorian culture, lore, and the book she wrote was. It was TCW that was the problem. And you just proven that without even saying it. The moment when it became clear the old model simply wouldn't work. No, it was working, and it worked after. Like I said, everything that came out after TCW went on as usual. It was kind of ignored. TCW was kind of ignored after the fact, with the exception of Abeloth. Lucas himself clearly wasn't concerned with the issue, and Disney chose to follow his lead. So you're going to go to adhere to authority kind of fallacy, right? Appeal to authority. Oh my God. And there you go, you guys. What do you guys think about this? Let's see here. Let me go back to the window here. Let's see here. Where am I at? All right. Let me see what you guys have to say, and then we're going to start closing out. But again, this person proved that, oh, and I got a super chat. Thank you so much. That TCW was a problem, not Karen Travis's stuff. I call them writers, but they don't have enough intelligence to our intelligent logic, our common sense to be referred to as such. TCW would have been different if Travis's or Tartakovsky took the job instead of Filoni, right? And he got, I guess you can say, cock blocked out of it in a sense. The new Mandalorians are a joke. They broke all the rules of being a Mandalorian, correct? And the true Mandalorians would have abolished them, and I wish they would have shown that as a retcon. Jim the Despot, to call Dave Filoni a cowboy in is an insult to cowboys everywhere, whether they're American, Canadian, or Mexican. I said he wore a cowboy hat, but if I called him a cowboy, I apologize. Laugh out loud. Hey Jacob, how you doing? Let's see here. No, it's Dark Saber. Sorry, I clearly misstated. Sup, Orange Hat. All right, why do they always use infinities as evidence? I don't know. Nothing was shoved into infinities during the TCW. Nothing was rebranded as infinities. Please hit the like button. Yes. And the anti-EU people have lied so I can't even talk right now. Holy crap. Let me take a sip. I'm like so spun up in the mind right now. So vociferously about it for years, and do so because Lucas says a bunch of quotes saying one thing, but he does entirely another when it comes to mixing lore and movies. Correct. Let's see here. Hail, and so hello Sentinel and Dad Man Walking, and I got a channel member here as well. Thank you. Let's see here. It's a load of bullocks. Correct. I agree with you. And this, yep, a load of Bantha Poodoo too as well. Lady Aaron, what's up? Want the true Mandalorian back? Real Boba would smash Bo Katan. Oh, they did him miserably in their new series. Oh my god. Having her knock him down, or her friend, I don't remember her name, defeat Boba Fett like they did. Odd, my comment didn't get approved. Wow. I didn't get to see. I don't know what it was. I'm sorry. I didn't get in there. Let me check it out, and I'll go up in there. Let's see here. Show. Okay, so thank you for the super chat, $5 to call Dave Filoni a cowboy. And yeah, I read that already, but thank you again so much. I appreciate the support. Let me see, where is that one now? Let me see here. I did approve it. Did it show up? Show. All right. Dave Filoni molestation of the Mandalorians is akin to the Russian kid killing. Wow. No wonder it didn't get. No wonder. Oh my God, that's a heavy one. But thank you for that. Soul Assassins. I didn't see that comment, Orange. Yeah. So, anyways, thank you guys so much. What do you guys think? I'm kind of late for my class, but that's okay. Let's see here. I can jump right in and with a cold body from sitting here for 2 hours. Let's see here. I tried to make a super chat earlier that ended with fuck Filoni, but it wouldn't let me send it. Wow, really? Interesting. Okay. You would think that because you're paying for it shouldn't matter, right? It's been 2 months since I've bought anything Star Wars. I'll make it even longer to the music store. Well, enjoy finding some music. Enjoy your music. Great stream, Laura. Thank you so much. So thank you guys again for tuning in and joining me for Caff Chat. Yes, these 2 articles were the cringiest of the cringe I've ever seen. But thank you to Caffeinated Wolf and to Soul Assassin for those 2 articles and contributing to Caff Chat this morning as well. Thank you guys again for chatting with me and talking Star Wars lore and bringing up the direction that continued Disney Lucasfilm associates seem to carry, the same rhetoric of EU bad, fans bad. I hate, George Lucas kind of thing. We're seeing that still going on 10 years later. So fucking ridiculous, you guys. It's just exhausting at times. But I will still keep it in front of you guys in a way to show that they're not genuine, that they don't have their heart in the right place. you should still honor the lore that came before, calling instead of making it controversy and making it hated and stuff like that. Everything that came before is the reason why Star Wars is loved. And once you start smashing that into the ground and stuff and making it hated, you start losing your fans. You start losing the foundation, which I think it's far gone. And one more thing I was going to touch upon. The direction the Star Wars has gone wasn't only because of JJ, RJ, KK, and Bob. It started with the EU. So the Disney trilogy didn't ruin Star Wars. It contributed to it. What ruined Star Wars is Rebels and tossing out the EU. Those were the signals on what was to come. Yeah, The Last Jedi might have been the last straw for a lot of you guys. Not for me. But I'm just here to tell you, those main four aren't just the ones to blame. You also have Filoni. You also have Favreau. I'm sorry. Okay, I'll probably get people talking shit to me about that. But you have Favreau too, because he's still contributing to the direction of Star Wars. So think about that for a minute. And as I close here, keep up with expanding your knowledge with the EU lore, with the Star Wars lore pre-Disney. Enjoy yourself with it. It may not be continued anymore, but it's still there for us. There's so much of it that you can read through all of it and still go through it again and still catch something different that you never notice. And, Matt Wilkins is the person that is sharing that. Because when you watch his reread reviews, he's like, oh, I didn't catch on to this last time. So you rediscover every single time. And that's a beautiful thing. And then it also keeps you looking at the movies, George's movies, in a clearer vision than a clouded one that this Disney lore has given you. So keep it real. Keep it EU. Keep it George Lucas. And I will talk with you guys later. You guys have a great day. And may the Force be with you.
The fate of the galaxy is now in your hands. With the new LEGO Star Wars Slave One, you can load Captain Solo, arm your weapon systems, man the cockpit, and take off with the most feared ship in the galaxy. But watch out for rebel ships. No matter the enemy, no matter the firepower, you control the action. With the new LEGO Star Wars collection.
Another happy landing.